So the first thing I wanted to go over was the brewing equipment. Everybody's got a different system. I'm going to kind of walk you through the different items that I use and that I've become part of my system over the years. Pretty simple system, but I'll start with some of the equipment, and then we'll also go through a brew that I'm making today. One of the main things you'll need is a brewing kettle. I use approximately a 10-gallon homemade stainless steel brew kettle. It's a bunch of different things you can find on the market. Get you a stainless steel brew kettle of some sort and it'll last you forever. Mine's about 10 gallons. I put a few marks on the outside. You also need some method of getting things brewing. And you can either do it inside and risk making a big mess, or as you see here, I use a good old-fashioned turkey fryer, as people call it. Then you'll have several different types of buckets. I've got a bucket here that'll soon just be a bucket for some sanitized water as I'm getting going. And then I have my mash tun and lauter tun, just simple food grade buckets. You need to make sure that you get you food grade buckets, get you some spigots that you can add to it if they're not already on them. And for the mash tun, a lot of different ways you can do it, but as you'll see here, I have a false bottom that I took a 1/4-inch drill bit, drilled a bunch of holes in the bottom, made my false bottom. It sits right in to another bucket for the mash tun. And as we go through the brew demo, you'll better understand what that's all about. But then the lauter tun is a simple bucket with a spigot on it and a short hose with a little clamp where I can either clamp it off or just sit it on the side of a bucket for ease of use. Also have some kind of mechanism you'll see shortly, but I use a couple of blocks to get it up higher. There's all kinds of sophisticated ways of doing it, but you need something that works. You'll also need a cooler. In my system, I use a 48 Igloo 48 for maintaining the temperature of the mash for approximately an hour. It'll drop about 10 degrees, so I always add the 10 degrees hotter water than for the strike that I'm looking to get for the rest, whether it be 30 minutes or 45 minutes or 60 minutes, whatever it is. You also need a long handled spoon. You'll need a long stem thermometer. You need a carboy, glass carboy, or two, depending on what your needs are. You could do everything in a bucket with the lid. Just to backtrack a little bit, you could do everything with a bucket. If all you had was plastic buckets, you wouldn't have to have a carboy. You could actually stick your airlock, which is another piece that you'll need, right into that. Or you could use carboy, and you'll have the stopper at the top, along with the airlock. You'll also need a test tube and a hydrometer. Hydrometer measures the relative density of the whatever you're measuring as it relates to water. So specifically, we'll be measuring specific gravity in our brew. At the end of the brew, before you add the yeast, you'll measure that original gravity. And then after the fermentation process is over, you will measure again for the final gravity. And once everything quits moving, and then you'll do a measurement between the two to get your average or your estimated your estimated alcohol by volume. So, but anyway, you also need, or you don't have to have, but a good idea to have a wort chiller. It'll cool everything off a lot faster than time. But by having this wort chiller, you can either hook it straight to a water hose, and depending on the time of year, if the water's cool enough, you've got to try to get the wort temperature down as quickly as possible. I use a submersible pump, as you'll see here, and I just attach the outbound to it. I stick the pump down in some water with some ice to get even a cooler water, so that it cools that wort faster. And the faster you cool that wort down, the less likelihood you are to have various contaminants to get in there, and you want to do everything as sanitary as possible. So I think I've gone over all of the items laying here, probably missed a couple things. Definitely a good idea to have a striker of some sort to light your fire. If you're using a turkey fryer like me, you need a couple of pot holders. You'll need a siphon tube at some point in the process, probably not today, but just so you'll know the different things you'll need, and some tubing. And it's always a good idea to keep some additional tubing on hand because you never know when you might need to replace a piece. And you always want to have a nice sanitary piece of tubing when you're doing whatever you're doing. And then a carboy cleaner, so you want to be able to get down in there good, clean everything out really well. And then I use these Camden tablets, which when we go through the brewing demo today, you'll see it's an integral process. I always want to treat the water that I'm using, and I've had good success over the years using a couple of tablets for 5 or 6 gallons of water at a time. But anyway, that's pretty much the equipment.